She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Ethan frowned. "What's that?" Instead of answering, she placed it gently on the dresser between them. "I found this while cleaning the attic." His curiosity slowly replaced the panic. "What is it?" "It belonged to your grandmother." He looked at the faded blue velvet, its corners softened with age. His mother lifted the lid. Inside rested a delicate silver locket. Nothing extravagant. Just an old family keepsake polished by decades of careful hands. "I've never seen this before." "You were too young to remember." She smiled faintly. "Your grandmother believed every generation carried pieces of the last." Ethan reached toward the necklace, but hesitated. "I don't understand." "I know." She closed the box and slid it toward him. "I'm not asking you to wear it. I'm asking you to stop being afraid of asking yourself difficult questions." He looked away. "You keep saying things like that because you've spent your whole life trying to become the version of yourself everyone expected." Her voice remained gentle. "I don't want to tell you who you are. I want you to decide that for yourself." Silence settled between them. For the first time since all of this had begun, Ethan wasn't sure whether he had misunderstood her all along. Had she been trying to shape him? Or had she simply been clumsy in encouraging him to explore parts of himself he had never examined? The uncertainty frustrated him. "I need space," he finally said. His mother nodded immediately. "Then take it." No argument. No pressure. No disappointment. She simply walked toward the door. Before leaving, she paused. "Whatever you discover about yourself, I hope it's your own choice." The bedroom door clicked shut. Ethan remained standing in front of the mirror. The reflection looking back no longer felt like a puzzle with only one answer. It felt like a question, one only he could answer. For the first time in weeks, he understood something important. No one, not family, not society, not fear, could decide his identity for him. Whatever came next had to be his decision. And that realization was both terrifying and strangely freeing. Ethan opened his mouth to answer. Nothing came out. His mother's question lingered in the room, not because it demanded an answer, but because it exposed how uncertain he felt about himself. Finally, he looked away. "I don't know," he admitted. For the first time in weeks, those 3 words felt more honest than any explanation he could have invented. His mother studied him quietly. "I don't expect you to have everything figured out. Then why does it feel like you're trying to decide it for me?" The question hung between them. Her expression softened. "I lost your father," she said after a long pause. "And somewhere along the way, I started believing that if I could shape your future, I wouldn't have to face how little control I had over everything else." Ethan frowned. "What does that have to do with me?" "More than it should." She sat on the edge of the bed. "I kept convincing myself I was encouraging you to explore who you are." She looked down at her hands. "But maybe I crossed the line." Silence filled the room. Ethan glanced at the neatly arranged clothes on the bed. "I don't even know what I want anymore." "You don't have to know today." She stood and began quietly gathering the outfits. "I'm putting these away." He watched without speaking. "If you ever decide to explore any part of yourself, whether that's your appearance, your interests, or the life you want, it has to be because you chose it." She carried the clothes toward the closet. "Not because I suggested it." Ethan felt a tension in his chest begin to loosen. It wasn't relief. Not entirely. There were still difficult conversations ahead. Still questions neither of them could answer. But for the first time since everything had begun, the pressure to become someone else had lifted. Whatever kind of person he eventually discovered himself to be, the decision would belong to him. And that, he realized, was the only place an honest future could begin. I followed Mom toward the cafe entrance, my heart pounding with every step. The evening air felt cool against my skin, but it did nothing to calm the storm inside me. Every passing stranger seemed to glance in my direction, and I couldn't stop wondering if they could see through me, if they somehow knew how uncertain and overwhelmed I felt. Mom walked confidently beside me, as though this outing were the most ordinary thing in the world. She smiled warmly and held the door open. "There you are," she said softly. "Nothing to be afraid of." I hesitated on the threshold before stepping inside. The cafe was quiet, filled with the comforting aroma of fresh coffee and baked pastries. Soft music drifted through the room while conversations blended into a gentle background hum. No one stared. No one whispered. Most people were too busy with their own lives to notice us. Mom guided me to a small table near the window. As we sat down, she watched me carefully. "See?" she asked with a reassuring smile. The world didn't stop. I looked down at my hands resting in my lap. They were trembling slightly. "I still feel like everyone is looking at me." "That's because you're looking at yourself through fear," she replied. "Most people are thinking about their own lives, not judging yours." A server approached with a friendly smile. "What can I get for you two today?" For a brief moment I froze, expecting questions or awkward looks. Instead, the server simply waited patiently for our order. Mom ordered tea for both of us along with a slice of cake to share. When the server left, she leaned forward. "I'm not asking you to become someone else overnight," she said gently. "I'm asking you to understand yourself without fear." I searched her face, unsure what to believe anymore. Part of me wanted to reject everything that had happened over the past few weeks. Another part couldn't deny that I was confused by my own feelings. "I don't know who I am anymore," I admitted quietly. She reached across the table and lightly squeezed my hand. "Then don't rush to decide," she said. "Identity isn't something you discover in a single day. It takes time." For the first time since all of this began, neither of us spoke for several minutes. We simply sat together while rain tapped softly against the cafe windows, each lost in our own thoughts about what the future might hold. "Let's sit here for a moment," Mom said softly. "Everything will be okay." I followed her inside with trembling hands, every step feeling heavier than the last. The conversations around the room gradually faded, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. People glanced in my direction, not with laughter or disgust, but with quiet curiosity that somehow felt even more overwhelming. Soft whispers floated through the air. A few polite smiles appeared. Some people quickly looked away the moment our eyes met. The instant I entered, my skin tingled with anxiety. I wanted nothing more than to disappear into the background. Mom, on the other hand, looked completely at ease. She smiled naturally, ordered our drinks, and joked with the waiter as though this was just another ordinary evening. As soon as he walked away, I leaned closer and whispered, "Everyone's staring at me." She smiled gently. "Let them." I lowered my eyes. "I don't belong here." She studied my face for a long moment before quietly asking, "Then why does everyone else seem perfectly comfortable accepting you?" Her question echoed in my mind all the way home. The second we stepped through the front door, everything I'd been holding inside finally erupted. I rushed upstairs, slammed my bedroom door shut, and leaned against it, trying to slow my racing heartbeat. With shaky fingers, I pulled off my earrings. I wiped away the lipstick until my face stung, smearing half-finished makeup across my cheeks. When I looked into the mirror, I barely recognized the person staring back. Someone trapped between two different versions of themselves. Then I noticed another reflection. Mom stood quietly in the doorway. "Stop watching me," I snapped. For just a brief moment, pain crossed her face. Raw. Unfiltered. "I'm not against you, Lena. Don't call me that." She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Do you know how long I've waited to see you genuinely happy?" I was happy. She slowly shook her head. "No, you weren't. You were empty. You shut everyone out. You disappeared a little more every single day." "I was losing you." Those words tightened something deep inside my chest. "So, this is your solution?" I asked bitterly. "You replace me?" She looked directly into my eyes. "I'm not replacing you." Her voice softened. "I'm trying to save you." "From what?" "From the person you've been forcing yourself to be." Silence settled between us. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then she slowly reached out her hand. "You don't have to fight anymore." I looked into her eyes. There was love there, but there was also desperation. A determination that frightened me. For the first time, my certainty began to crack. Sleep never came that night. I sat beside the window while moonlight spilled across the floorboards, replaying every lesson, every conversation, Every outfit she'd encouraged me to wear, and the name she insisted on using. Was she creating someone new, or uncovering someone I'd hidden from even myself? Around 2 in the morning, I stood in front of the mirror once more. Without makeup, I looked different. My hair framed my face more softly. My expression seemed calmer somehow. Even stripped of everything she'd taught me, I no longer looked exactly like Ethan. I whispered to my reflection, "Who am I?" The room offered no answer. The next morning, a folded note rested on my desk. "My dear Lena, if leaving is truly what you want, the front door is unlocked. But if you decide to stay, today we begin again. No pretending. No hiding. Only honesty. Love, Mom." I read the note over and over until the words blurred together. Eventually, I walked downstairs. The front door stood open exactly as she'd promised. Outside was everything I'd always known. My old life. My old name. My old identity. All I had to do was take one step. But my feet refused to move. Behind me came her quiet voice. "Lena." I turned. She stood silently with tears shining in her eyes. Her arms opened, not demanding, not forcing, simply waiting. "You don't have to decide today," she whispered. "Just be." My heart pounded. One slow step, then another. Each movement felt both terrifying and strangely natural. When I finally stopped only inches away from her, she leaned close enough for only me to hear. "Welcome home, my daughter." The words hung in the air, part comfort, part spell. I couldn't answer. I couldn't agree. I couldn't run away. I simply stood there, caught between two names, two identities, and two futures that no longer fit together. Morning arrived almost silently. From downstairs came the soft clatter of dishes and a familiar lullaby she used to sing when I was little. The melody stirred memories I hadn't thought about in years. Comforting, yet deeply unsettling. The smell of pancakes drifted upstairs. For one brief moment, I wondered if everything from yesterday had simply been a nightmare. The dress, the makeup, the conversations, the name. But as soon as I entered the kitchen, reality returned. Mom was already sitting at the table, smiling as though nothing unusual had happened. Breakfast had been prepared perfectly. Yet one detail stopped me cold. Beside my plate sat a pink ceramic mug. Across the front were the words, "Mommy's girl." I froze. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said warmly. "You were awake pretty late. Did you sleep?" I guess." As I sat down, she casually glanced toward the mug. "Oh, that." I found it packed away. I thought it was adorable. I stared at it, then at her. "You used to call me Champ, remember?" For the first time that morning, her smile faded. "You've outgrown that. I'm not your—" "This isn't a joke," she interrupted gently. "You've been drifting away for years, Ethan. I can't even remember the last time I saw you truly smile. I'm only trying to help. By turning me into someone else?" She didn't answer. Instead, she calmly placed another piece of pancake onto my plate. "Eat. It'll help." I wanted to refuse. I wanted to argue. Instead, I quietly picked up my fork. Something about the calm certainty in her voice always made resistance feel impossible. As a child, it always had. She watched me carefully. Not lovingly, not coldly. Almost like someone observing an experiment. Then she spoke again. "You loved dressing up when you were little." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "What? You really don't remember?" I frowned. "Remember what?" "You used to sneak into my closet. You'd wrap yourself in my scarves. You'd put on my lipstick. You'd spin around in front of the mirror until you laughed. You looked so happy. I was 4. That doesn't mean anything." She looked directly into my eyes. "It means more than you think. That was before the world decided who you were supposed to become." Her words settled heavily inside me. "Mom, you need to stop." She tilted her head. "Stop what?" "This. All of this. The lessons. The clothes. The constant pressure. Trying to make me into someone I'm not." Her expression remained calm. "I'm not changing you. I'm helping you remember." That afternoon, I locked myself in my room, desperate for silence. I buried myself behind my laptop, hoping distraction would quiet my thoughts. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every footstep outside my door made my chest tighten. Then came a gentle knock. "Ethan? May I come in?" I sighed before unlocking the door. She entered carrying a small white gift box wrapped neatly with pale pink ribbon. "I brought you something." "I don't want it. Just open it." Reluctantly, I lifted the lid. Inside rested a delicate silver bracelet. One word had been engraved across its surface. "Lena." My stomach dropped. "What is this?" "A gift." She smiled softly. "A name should feel like home. You've carried one that never truly belonged to you. My name is Ethan, and you don't get to decide otherwise." Her voice became almost a whisper. "Don't you see? You avoid mirrors. You hide from people. You shrink every time someone looks at you. You're unhappy. I know you are."
No.
"I am." She slowly shook her head. "You've spent years pretending. I'm your mother. I've always known." Her certainty wrapped itself around every thought I had. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted desperately to believe her. That night, the bracelet rested on my bedside table. Moonlight reflected across the polished silver. I kept telling myself it was meaningless. Just metal. Just a name. Yet somehow, my eyes always drifted back toward it. Something about it felt strangely familiar. Around 2 in the morning, almost without thinking, I picked it up. The cool metal slipped around my wrist effortlessly. For one brief moment, an unexpected calm settled over me. Then a quiet voice drifted through the darkness. "I knew you'd wear it." I spun toward the doorway. Mom stood there in the moonlight. "What are you doing?" "I'm not watching." She smiled softly. "I've simply been waiting." My heartbeat thundered. "You're sick." She gently shook her head.
No.
"I'm patient." Then she quietly disappeared into the hallway, leaving me alone with the bracelet and feelings I still couldn't explain. I can help rewrite and polish the writing, but I can't assist with creating or strengthening content that eroticizes coercion, forced identity, or non-consensual transformation. If your goal is a psychological thriller or emotional drama, here's a rewritten version that emphasizes the emotional conflict rather than coercive elements. Every exercise seemed to wear away another layer of my confidence. Whenever I completed one correctly, Mom rewarded me with the same quiet smile, a small nod, or a gentle word of encouragement. "Well done." I told myself those words meant nothing. Yet, somewhere deep inside, I found myself waiting to hear them again. That frightened me more than anything. Later that evening, alone in my room, I stared at the silver bracelet resting around my wrist. The engraved name caught the light.
Lena.
I whispered it aloud. The name still felt unfamiliar, almost as though it belonged to someone else entirely. Even so, rejecting it outright suddenly felt harder than I wanted to admit. For the first time, I realized this was no longer about clothes, makeup, or appearances. It had become a struggle over identity. And the most unsettling part was that I no longer understood which thoughts were truly mine. The days blended together into an exhausting routine of conversations, careful guidance, and quiet expectations. Mom never raised her voice. She never argued or demanded. Instead, she remained endlessly patient, speaking with a calm certainty that somehow made resistance feel increasingly difficult. One morning I woke to find my bedroom carefully arranged. Fresh clothes rested neatly on the bed. Shoes were lined beside the dresser. A handwritten note lay on top. "Today, spend the day discovering who you want to be." I crumpled the note in my hand. Downstairs, Mom was waiting with breakfast already prepared. She smiled as I entered. "Good morning." I avoided her eyes. "I'm not doing this anymore." Her expression remained gentle. "I'm not asking you to become someone else," she replied. "I'm asking you to stop running from the questions you've been avoiding." I shook my head. "You keep acting like you already know who I am." "I don't," she admitted quietly. "But I believe only you can answer that." Those words lingered with me far longer than I expected. Throughout the afternoon, She encouraged me to slow down,
To breathe.
to notice my posture, to pay attention to how I carried myself. Each exercise felt ordinary on its own, yet together they forced me to confront something I'd spent years ignoring. Every reflection in every mirror seemed to ask the same question. Who are you when nobody else's expectations are guiding you? I hated that question, mostly because I couldn't answer it. That night, I stood alone before the mirror. The bracelet reflected the pale glow of the bedside lamp. I looked at my own face for a long time, not searching for Ethan, not searching for Lena, simply searching for myself. For the first time in weeks, I understood that no one, not even Mom, could decide that answer for me. Whatever happened next, the choice would have to be mine. We're almost at the end, Mom said quietly. I stared at the floor. I can't do this anymore. Her expression remained calm, but there was sadness behind her eyes. You don't have to become anyone tonight, she replied. You only have to stop running from yourself. The words settled heavily between us. The living room felt smaller than ever. Every mirror reflected a different version of me, each one asking a question I couldn't answer.
Who was I? Who had I always been?
And why did every answer seem incomplete? A family friend sat quietly nearby, offering nothing more than a polite smile.
She wasn't there to judge me.
She simply waited while the silence stretched on. Mom handed me a delicate teacup. Take your time. My hands trembled as I lifted it. I took one careful step, then another. Halfway across the room, my sleeve brushed the edge of the table. The cup slipped from my fingers. Porcelain shattered across the hardwood floor. For a moment, nobody spoke. I'm sorry, I whispered. The words barely escaped my lips. Instead of reacting with disappointment, Mom slowly knelt beside the broken pieces. Mistakes happen, she said gently. They don't decide who you are. I closed my eyes. I don't know who I am anymore. She looked at me with quiet compassion. Then maybe that's the question we should be asking. Not whether you're Ethan or Lena, but why you feel you have to choose only one. The room fell silent again. For weeks I'd been treating my identity like a battle that one side had to win. Maybe that was why I felt so exhausted. Maybe the real answer wasn't about replacing one name with another. Maybe it was about understanding myself without fear. Later that evening I sat alone in my bedroom. The bracelet rested on my desk beside the mirror. I didn't put it on. I didn't throw it away. Instead, I simply looked at it. It had become less of a symbol and more of a question. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Inside, my reflection looked back at me with the same uncertainty I'd carried for years. For the first time, I didn't demand an answer. I simply admitted the truth. I don't know who I am yet. Somehow, saying those words felt more honest than pretending I already did. A gentle knock interrupted the silence. Mom stood in the doorway. I'm making tea, she said. If you'd like to talk, I'll be downstairs. There was no pressure, no expectation, only an open invitation. After she left, I looked into the mirror one last time. The reflection hadn't changed, but my perspective had. Tomorrow wouldn't decide my identity. Tomorrow would simply be another step toward discovering it, on my own terms.